You're listening to Wild Things and Wild Places, a Muley Fanatic Foundation podcast that aims to discuss issues and efforts related to the Muley Fanatic Foundation mission, the conservation of mule deer, furthering the sport of hunting, and sound wildlife management.
Everybody knows I'm a Muley Fanatic.
It's time for Wild Things and Wild Places. And here's your guide, Joshua Coursey.
And welcome to Wild Things and Wild Places. Joining me today, Nick Walrath from Trout Unlimited. Yeah, glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's great to be here, for sure.
I'm curious if other people might be thinking, why do you have a trout guy when you're a mule deer conservation group? Well, birds of a feather flock together. What's good for the bird is good for the herd. All of it, though, comes back to water. Mm-hmm. Nothing exists without water.
Yeah, especially out here, right?
Especially out here. And you deal with that all the time, obviously, a cold water fisheries guy. A little background on you.
Oh, yeah. Well, great. I grew up in Torrington, so North Cheyenne there, along the North Platte River. And big-time fisherman, love to fish for walleye and things like, and all the other catfish and stuff that are over there. And then also bird hunted a bunch. But grew up in Torrington, played sports, hunted, fished, and then went to college at the University of Wyoming.
Go Pokes?
Yeah, for sure. And then worked for the Game and Fish for a little bit.
As a fishery biologist?
Yeah, fisheries technician.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So seasonal. And then in the winters, I'd go find a job at a ski resort and ski. And then I had to...
What a life.
Yeah, it was quite the life. Yeah, it was for a while, and it's great now too. But yeah.
and eventually an opportunity came to...
Yep. Yeah, so I worked for the Game and Fish for, three different stints, 3 summers. I worked for the University of Wyoming for grad students and whatnot. And then, this came up. I'd worked in the Green River Basin, mostly south of Rawlins, and the Little Snake River Basin for a while, and met Scott Yates, and he offered me the job here in just the Green River Basin in Wyoming. So taking over essentially all of southwest Wyoming, doing project works with everybody, private landowners, BLM, Forest Service, Game and Fish, just trying to do good things for cold water fisheries.
Trout Unlimited is an enormous organization that has had a profound impact in conservation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I've been with Trout Unlimited for 13 years now. And when I started, I think there was under 200 staff nationwide. And I don't know, I should have looked before I got here, but we're well over that. I'd have to sit here and do the math, but we have staff in Jackson, 2 staff in Jackson right now. We have a staff in Cody, Star Valley, Lander, 2 in Green River here, and then looking to hire more. So in certain drainages, just in Wyoming, we've grown from a handful to a bunch. And then states like Colorado have huge staff.
Even more. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And doing great work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Trout Unlimited itself is broken into kind of 3 different kind of tiers. The volunteer tier, where you have your chapters and whatnot throughout the states and do all the volunteer work. And then that's the volunteer ops. And then there's the public lands or angler conservation group. They do comments and whatnot on public land issues and things like that.
More policy arena stuff.
Policy stuff. And then there's the project work or the habitat and water folks and that's who I work for. So I work for that habitat and water group, and all 3 of those they're separate. The chapter in Green River, Rock Springs, I don't get paid by them. I get paid by grants and things like that I go after. So I have to be identifying projects, creating my own position as we move forward. If they want to fund one of my projects, that's great, but I don't ask that of them. They don't have to if they don't want to.
So when you're identifying projects and a priority, what to tackle next, if you will, especially when your employment is tied to it, how far out are you? Are you a couple of years out? Or certainly these things don't just happen overnight.
Oh, no. So just take the project, for instance, that we did in town here. I've been working on that project for almost 7 years.
Yeah, and it's a huge project.
Yeah, and we just did phase 1 of it last year, or I guess it was this spring. Seems like a year ago. But so that one was identified almost 7-8 years ago, and then it took us that long to come up with the funds, hire the contractor.
Permitting.
Yeah, all the permitting stuff. It was in the city. We had all that just city stuff to deal with. And yeah, it turned out to be a great project.
So if you're not a if you're just not a fish guy at the level that you are a fish guy, where you don't live, eat, and breathe fish, particularly trout, what's the current status of trout? Are they in a good spot? I mean, there's been a lot of impacts to fisheries.
Yeah, especially cold water fisheries, as you can imagine, with all these different droughts that have been coming through, and this year obviously wasn't, but the Colorado River Basin has experienced a very long-term drought. If you live here or live in the Colorado River Basin, you've probably heard of it. It's been national news for a long time for just how long that basin and how stressed it is water-wise. Trout Unlimited sitting at the table fighting for cold water fisheries in that basin is really important. But I guess to get back to your question as far as like how trout are, the answer a lot of the time, especially with wildlife, is it depends. Right. So it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about Colorado River cutthroat, we're looking at a species that's in only 12 to 15% of what it used to inhabit as far as stream lengths and stuff like that. And then if you start getting into genetics, it's even more grim. So those populations of native trout, Colorado River cutthroat trout, the one that I deal with, are super important because there's not that many of them.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you talk in the arena that I'm in with mule deer conservation efforts, you talk about migration corridors and maintaining connectivity. A lot of those same type of conversations overlap to trout and fisheries.
Yeah, a lot of my work, we just finished a huge project with the Forest Service on LaBarge Creek where we identified 9 different culverts, replace the culverts with bridges or larger culverts to make sure that population of Colorado River cutthroat trout has access to all the stream length that it could. And most of that is trout need different habitat throughout their life history, just like a mule deer. And maintaining that access to different types of habitats just makes that population more resilient to things like fire, flood, drought, all the buzzwords that everybody's talking about these days.
Right. And for them to be able to thrive, not just exist.
Yeah, exactly.
But really sustainability.
Yeah, for sure.
Huh. Interesting. When we as an organization and you as an organization partnered on Gooseberry Creek years ago on a project. Yeah. And you've, of course, monitored that project since then and the progress of that project. Tremendous effort.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it still is.
The thing that stands out to me is how specialized of the skill set and the talent that was utilized for the contractor to come in and to be able to provide the necessary work to really, I would think at one point, there was no passability of fish prior to those efforts.
For Gooseberry Creek, right, there was essentially 3 barriers right there by the road, and there's 2 head cuts on either side of the road, and then the culvert itself was a barrier. We addressed all 3 of those, and then put a fence around some of it. And like you said, the contractor placing rocks obviously isn't that hard with a traco. Placing rocks exactly where you want them at the elevations you want them is a skill that takes time. And making sure that you have contractors that can do that and that can do that efficiently with the funds that you have is really important. And we have a handful that are, I shouldn't even say a handful. We have a bunch that are really good that we work with, and we're continuing to find more. And it's just exciting that folks are starting to get those types of skills.
Well, and the end for us on that project, or the value that we see in that project, is, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you're doing something that will enhance a tributary or a waterway like that, and then all of the supplemental benefits that come from that is the vegetation and everything else surrounding that, or in close proximity to, everything else benefits from that. That project is a project that I'll always hold a special place in just knowing the partnership of everybody that was involved, from the science class at the high school to come out and to be able to plant willows. To me, it was like the model of how we get things done in conservation.
Yeah, that was a fun project. And it's a project that I still go back and visit, just mostly because I have a fence issue that I need to go fix all the time. But
right.
But we do go back and fix it all the time. That is one thing. And there's aspen growing there and a couple of cottonwoods, and yeah, it is. You're right. It's a cool system and a cool stream and just a neat project that a lot of people helped with.
And you have a young daughter at home.
Yep.
You can imagine when she's 25 to be able to go there
Yeah.
and know what that's going to look like. It's going to be pretty neat. That, to me, that's the beauty of conservation.
It really is. Yeah. Hopefully we can have lunch underneath one of those trees sometime.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do they say? A lot of the efforts in conservation are in regards to a shade tree is that you're going to plant a tree that you may never benefit from sitting under and getting shade from, but on that one you might.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know, just for instance, we did a project similar to that on Red Creek, which is not that far from Gooseberry Creek, down south there. And some of those trees, not cottonwoods, aspen trees that we planted, they're over 14 feet tall now.
That's incredible.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And since we're at Muley Fanatics here, there's always a doe and a fawn in the exclosure. So she's figured out how to get through the fence and have her babies in that exclosure. So they have a big grocery store, those couple deer.
They found the one place that the elk can't get to.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big, one of those big tall fences that have 4 bars. Yeah, that deer's figured it out.
Yeah. Good for her.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. Which means the fawns have figured it out every year since.
Yeah. But man, it's crazy that the release that happened with the willows and the aspen trees on that project, just from just keeping the deer out or the elk out.
Right. And the feral horses.
And the feral horses and the moose and everything that likes
everything
to eat.
else that wants to eat it.
That wants to eat it. Yeah. So hopefully we can start expanding that project. And that's a neat one.
How much of an impact does, especially on a project like that, which I recall, I think that Game and Fish was also looking at relocating some beavers into that area.
And
hopefully they'll avoid your 14-foot tall trees.
Yeah, well, that's why we planted them, right? Yeah. So beavers eventually had some food, but hopefully now they're a little sentimental. But anyways, they can have them if they move in there.
How important is nature's engineer, the beaver, to the projects that you do?
Definitely depends on what project we're looking at, but especially in this arid West where we live, beavers in these types of streams are critical. They're critical for places like Gooseberry Creek or Trout Creek or Red Creek if we're talking down south. Just in overwintering fish, they're critical in oversummering fish in some of these like really low flow drought situations where the only water is essentially a beaver complex. And then they're also, when you start looking laterally from the stream, they're spreading that water out lots in a linear fashion away from the stream in a long ways. And they're improving habitat for mule deer and elk and everything else just by raising the water table up and catching sediment and starting the whole process over again. That is becoming very highly sought after in this basin, and we're getting requests for funds and starting projects up that essentially mimic beavers to hopefully entice them to start working in certain areas where we want them to. Now, and like I said, it depends, but if we're talking a culvert, beavers are pretty tough on culverts, but if we can somehow figure out to keep them either out of the culvert or build the culvert big enough to where it won't matter, then it becomes a little bit.
Yeah, there's a balancing act.
There definitely is, yeah. And then a lot of times I work with private landowners that have water rights and they have open ditches and things like that where a beaver in an open ditch we don't want those either.
Right. Yeah. Problem beaver.
Yeah. Problem beaver. So they're great when they're where they're supposed to be. How's that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. That's exactly how I feel about it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel like that too, right?
Yeah.
So.
No, I found it to be interesting that the state of Wyoming with the conservation stamp has never featured the beaver, nature's engineer. And when I brought that to Director Nesvik's attention, he said, I'll remedy that. And next year it'll be on the stamp.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is cool.
I'm actually going to ask if I can get my hands on how they blow the stamp up to a full-size framed print.
Yeah,
I'm going to ask Director Nesvik for
it's
like, hey, I'm calling in a favor.
Yeah, heck yeah, that'd be great.
So let's talk a little bit more about trout, because I do find it to be fascinating that the work you do involves a myriad of partners. As you mentioned, BLM, Forest Service with our federal partners, but then the state, Game and Fish works hand in hand with you on this stuff. But when you come to a project on private land, what's the poster child of success on a private land project that you have been able to do? Because that's all about trust, credibility, and relationships, and being able to have coffee at a private landowner's breakfast table or dinner table, and start a relationship that really persists.
Oh yeah.
for all time.
It really does.
And to me, that is impactful. We have half of our state is tied up in private land ownership, and for good reason. Some of the best stewards of our habitats and landscapes are private landowners.
Oh, yeah.
That work and live on these lands. And so do you have an example of a project where a private landowner maybe was a little reluctant at first, and it took a little persistence, and it took some relationship building to build some trust, but ultimately has been a successful project for coldwater fisheries?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a couple. I've been doing this for 13 years, and I've met a lot of folks, been told no a handful of times, not even have this cup of coffee, just no. But
gates still shut.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's their property. If they want to do it, that's fine. But we've had some great success. There's a project that we identified it as a landowner that was having it was obvious they were having lots of issue maintaining their diversion. So there was a head cut that went through their diversion. They tried, within their right, they tried to redam the creek, build structures. They kept failing, and they couldn't irrigate. But it was obvious they weren't going to stop trying. And within that, they were screwing up the creek. Right. We have lots of examples where we've come in and built structures that can divert water, be fish passable or fish friendly, however you want to say it, and still divert water and maintain the water right. This particular landowner, he was out shooting prairie dogs with his yar, and I was like, well, I'll just go talk to him. And so I pulled up and I waved at him, and
big white flag.
Just waved at him, and he stopped and was like, "What's this guy doing?" And but I wouldn't think anything of it, really. Right. You know, growing up in Torrington, whatever. That growing up in Wyoming is not that big a deal. So I went up and talked to him about who I was, who I worked for, and stuff. And we got to talking, and it turns out, just like a lot of these private landowners and a lot of the ranches, it's not just one person. It's grandma, it's grandpa, it's aunt.
Mixed bag of decision makers.
Yep. It wasn't as easy as, sure, let's do it. Yeah. It was about 5 years of drinking coffee with grandma, talking to uncle and aunt, and making sure the black helicopters weren't going to come in and take all their water rights and take their ranch away. But we got it done. And I think that was 2015 or 2016. We implemented that project, and to this day, it's still one of the best projects we've done. And I mean, that stream had down cut 8 feet, and we brought it back up, and they're diverting water. Now they have a pipeline, so they're super efficient. And they still, to this day, they still think about, they could at that point divert all the water out of the creek and it'd be their right to do that. But they still think about the trout.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was an educational experience for them as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think they ever didn't think about the trout.
Sure.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. New priority for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And we continue to work with that.
With that same landowner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you have a project like that, there's a lot of assessment that needs to take place, and then ultimately some costs, some participation with NRCS.
Yeah.
How does that work, where you actually get to identify what the project is, what it's going to entail, and then the resources financially and material-wise to be able to bring the project home? Yeah,
so that particular project, there's a lot of different funders in that project. There was state, BLM, so there's state, federal. So the state funder, one of the largest state funders that Trout Unlimited uses almost in every project, and that's Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust Fund, and that's a board, and I've WWNRT and Bob Budd and the board there.
It's such a treasure for the state of Wyoming.
It truly is. Just on a side note, I have lots of colleagues that live in Colorado, Utah, Montana, and when we get to talk about our state funding and the amount of match it brings federally, it's crazy, because we have such a large pot of money for wildlife. It's truly a treasure, just like you. I think that's a great way to put it.
It is
because
unbelievable.
The amount of money that non-federal money can match in some of these projects is just astounding.
Right.
So anyways, they were a big funder. BLM was a big funder. We had WLCI was a big funder. So that's the Wyoming Landscape Conservation Initiative. They're a mix of everybody. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Game and Fish. Conservation District.
Yeah, I'm missing people. Yeah. But yeah. And then we had, this is tough. I should have wrote this one down.
You're thinking, I don't want to leave anybody out.
I don't want to leave anybody out, but WLCI, WWNRT.
What was the total price tag on a project like that?
It was well over $100,000. So we're
Okay.
pushing $200,000. And then, Westmoreland Coal donated the rock. So that was pretty good. They have a rock pit, a rock quarry. Yeah, outside of Kimmer there. And for a long time, they were a great partner. Right now, the quarry's we don't get to use it a lot. But so the rock came from there. So they're a partner in that project. But the way that project started, we gathered up some initial funds. So it was like Game and Fish and stuff like that or Fish Passage with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is the first money in. And with that first money in was U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Fish Passage money or Game and Fish or both. And we used that to do the initial survey. And then with that initial survey, get a design. And then from the design, we get a cost estimate of the project. And that's usually the toughest money to come across, right? Because you're essentially trying to fundraise for a project that you have no idea how much it's going to cost. You have
just a guesstimate.
You have a guess. Yeah, you have a guess. You're like, well, it needs to be a whole lot different. And
you don't want to undercut yourself.
No.
Yeah, you can't get $150,000 into it and know you're only 2/3 of the project.
For sure. So that's how it starts. And then from there, you have a goal. And you're like, okay, we need to get to $200,000, and then I can take this out to bid and start getting cost bids, because that's just the engineer cost.
Right.
And sometimes the engineer and the contractors don't agree on how much things are going to cost, if anybody's ever built a house or anything. But so then you're there. Then if you get a bid back that everybody can agree on, then you can go to construction after you get the permits and everything else.
Yeah. How much of your time, Nick, is spent developing this process compared to field work? Obviously, you're limited by seasons of construction that have, when the weather is conducive to be able to actually put these projects into place. And that's a very narrow window, probably a very busy season for you. But the rest of the year, that's what you're doing is dotting the I's. And
it's figuring out what you want to do next year.
Yeah.
Figuring out where you need money. So we need to, right now it's a big fundraising season.
Right.
Identifying what grants you're going to go after with what projects, if you have a cost on the project, and then reporting. So right now at the end of the year, a lot of reporting on some of the grants that we've spent money on, and then redoing budgets and figuring out where we are on certain projects.
Yeah, one thing.
It's a lot. A lot of my time is spent doing that. It's not just I'm not just out fishing.
Out fishing.
A lot of people think I work for.
You always have a fly rod in your hand.
I do, in my truck.
In my truck.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess a lot of my time is not out in the field.
Yeah,
especially this time of year. In the summertime, I'm out driving around from Pinedale to Bags somewhere.
Yeah, and in October you're out looking for those big brown somewhere, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fish a lot in the summertime, but lately I got a bird dog and I've been following my bird dog a lot.
Yeah, is it going good?
It's going great.
You mentioned earlier that there's two of you that work on TU staff out of this area, out of the Green River office. I am privy to knowing this, but others should know. You get the pleasure of working with your wife every day.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, she has a totally different role with Trout Unlimited.
I wouldn't say totally, but it's different responsibilities. Yep. She's been with TU for 10 years. So we figured it out for a decade now. And we're still hard at work, still, doing good things for cold water fish. But
that's got to be interesting to work with your wife every day.
Yeah. We stay out of each other's business if we need to. Her projects are her projects.
When you go home, you're not talking about what happened at the office.
Rarely. It does seep in.
That's got to be a joy, though. To work with your best friend.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah. It really is.
That's what it should be, right?
Yeah, it truly is a blessing to have that opportunity to work with her. And here, like I said, 10 years, it's flown by.
Nick and Hillary at the TU office.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Yeah, come by and see us.
Yeah. As a closing question, that's where I'd like to go with this next. If someone was interested in a project on private land or knew of a project, you're very available.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
By appointment.
Yeah. Yeah. We can put my phone number and stuff on there. Give me a call, shoot me an email. We can talk about all the projects are prioritized in some way. We'd have to go through that whole process a little bit as far as like how we're going to prioritize the project and see where the funding can come from. But we could talk about it for sure.
At the end of the day, again, as I alluded to at the beginning, things that benefit the fisheries, trout, water, ultimately they benefit deer. and birds and everything else. That's the staple of life, is water.
Yeah. Improving and riparian habitat helps fish, deer, everything.
Everything.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your work, Nick. You do tremendous work. It's been a pleasure to be your friend for more than a decade now, and to be involved with the conservation efforts that we have been able to partner together. And I just appreciate you and what you're doing. And keep up the good work.
Oh, yeah. Thanks a lot. Back at you, man.
Nick Walrath, Trout Unlimited. You can find Nick at the Green River office. We'll be sure to put contact information there as well. If you'd like to reach out to Nick, if you have an idea about a project or would like to visit with him about a potential project, I can tell you'll enjoy the time spent with Nick. He is an expert in his field, and you won't be disappointed for making that contact. Nick Walrath, Wild Things and Wild Places. If you like, hit subscribe, please share. And new episodes every Tuesday, Wild Things and Wild Places.
Gathered around the campfire's flickering glow, stories ignited, bridging hearts and minds as the world outside faded and connection reigned supreme. Welcome to Campfire Chats.
We're going to talk with Jill Eaton today, and I am excited to introduce you to Jill Eaton. If you've not met Jill, you're going to enjoy just hearing her talk about hunting and what it means to her and her family. Jill, Farson, Wyoming, owner of 4 businesses, but yet you still find time every year to hunt, and not only hunt, but you do it well. Fair?
Yeah, I guess that sums it up pretty well. Like I mentioned earlier, I definitely like to be busy. So the different companies let me, if I get bored with something too quick, I get to move on to something else. The outdoors is definitely my escape. I like to go out and not have service and not have to deal with people sometimes and get away, and that's my safe place.
Boy, well said. So you and your husband, Dustin, you have a ranch, private landowners, quite the cattle operation in the Eden Valley.
Yep, that was my husband's dream growing up he moved away for a few years. That's where I met him, and always wanted to come back and ranch, and he just has that in his soul, and I definitely love it now, but he probably spends more time on that side of things than I do, but definitely has its good days and bad.
Yeah, I bet. In addition to the ranch, you guys also own the feed store, and then you have the Merc, the home of the Big Cone. That's got to be cool, right? The Big Cone, it's world renowned.
Yep, I think we both love having that store, but I do feel like that's probably one of my guilt-conscious things that I don't spend enough time on. I wish I spent more time down there and decorating or updating some things. And we have a manager out there who kind of runs and does the orders, and that's great. But Dustin's more focused on the ranch and the feed store, and then I'm more focused here in town at the IT business. So that's one of those things that if I was retired, I feel like I'd tinker with or have more fun with.
Yeah, well, and that's where I was going to go next. In addition to those 3 that are all located within that Eden Valley, Farson area, then you every day make the trek to Rock Springs. Your background, your education, your schooling, IT is something that you're very good at. You're very passionate about it, and it prompted you to start Sweetwater Technologies, a thriving IT business in Sweetwater County.
Yep, that's right. I'm definitely a nerd at heart. I grew up playing with computers. My dad was into computers, and that's what kind of I've always done and knew I was going to do growing up. I was real big into gaming and stuff when I was younger and loved that side of things. I had never hunted or even been outdoors before I moved to Wyoming, and never, well, I guess I've been outdoors, but never hunted, never shot a rifle, never shot anything growing up. And so I think that's why I like it out here. I get to mix the IT and get to do my IT stuff and still get to enjoy a little more of the outdoors.
Yeah, perfect segue where I wanted to go with this conversation. Your short career as a big game hunter, not something that, as you indicated, growing up in South Carolina, you didn't do. That wasn't a life choice of yours at that time, but certainly you've adopted it as a way of life in Wyoming. Let's talk about your very first hunt.
So my very first real hunt, I was fortunate enough to draw a moose tag. I don't think anyone was happy for me at the time.
There are those.
But when I moved here, Dustin's best friends, we'd go over to their house and they had this giant bull moose mounted on their wall. And as soon as I saw that, that was like my dream at that moment. All I want to do is get a big moose. And when everyone got mad at me, the more I talked about it, because I talked about my moose tag like I already had it in the bag. oh, when I get mine, I'm going to mount right here. It's going to face this way. And I don't know. I just saw that moose on the wall. And I think I was more obsessed with the taxidermy and the artwork part of it than I was like actually shooting an animal. It was just like, I want that.
I want that in my living room. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to draw. That was my first big game draw tag. And I had probably shot some jackrabbits and gophers before that, but no big game animal. And at the time when I moved here, you could still buy over-the-counter antelope tags. And so I remember Dustin, he came home one day, I'm getting you an over-the-counter antelope tag, and we're going to go kill something and see how you do. And we went out for a little drive just right behind Farson, and I dropped this little doe antelope, and he just looked at me and shrugged, and I was like, what's wrong? What did I do? Did I shoot the wrong one? What's wrong? And he's like, I didn't actually expect you to shoot it. And he's like, you're not going to cry? And I don't think anyone expected me to enjoy it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to cry.
You're like, no, I got this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, from that first shot of that doe antelope, the next step in the process, field dressing of that antelope, was that something you did, or is that something Dustin was like, I got it from here, there's girl jobs, there's boy jobs, this is my job? How did that shake out?
I don't think it's girl jobs, boy jobs, but I definitely think Dustin he's an engineer. Right. He is a hands-on person, and he's impatient.
He's let me do this.
He pretty much did most all my field dressing and everything for years. Now, especially, it was always, oh, it's about dark, or there's a grizzly bear. We're in grizzly bear country. We got to get out of here. Or there's always some pressure of some sort where I just got to get it done. And so I've since later killed an antelope in Farson, and I'm like, stand back. You're not touching this thing. I'm going to do this. And you can yell and scream at you all you want, but I'm not going to let you touch this. I'm going to do this on my own. So I've had to force him to let me do some of that. Not that he doesn't think I can or want to. It's just, he's always just
take charge.
Yeah. Got 4 businesses, got more work to be done. We got to get out of here.
Yeah. Yep. I'm curious, a significant difference between field dressing an antelope and field dressing a moose. That had to have been an experience in itself.
Yeah, that was so early on that we've hunted so much since then. I don't know that I even remember all of that experience that early on. I remember the moose was just giant, and I remember him handing me a leg and propped up and was like, just hold this up while I get in here and gut it. And it just threw me over. I underestimated how much a moose leg weighed.
Right.
And so it was neat to watch. I took lots of pictures and have watched lots of YouTube videos and stuff like that. But most of the time, I just let him do his thing. And
yeah, so you've had many hunts since then. Quite the accomplished bull elk huntress, I would say.
Yeah.
That seems to be your passion. You like big elk, and you've killed a lot of big elk.
Yep. I love it all. My big bucket list item is I want to get one of every big and trophy game in Wyoming one day. Yeah. And I'm fortunate enough that I think I can do it at my age and drawing some of the tags I've already drawn. But definitely love the elk hunting. Meat's probably one of the best.
I was going to ask, as a cattle operation owner, supplementing your obvious beef intake with big game, where does that rank in priority?
Yeah, so because we do raise beef and we always have fresh beef in the freezer, we do a ton of summer sausage and jerky and try to make different things with big game meat. We'll definitely throw some steaks on the grill, but I'm a big summer sausage person. I love it. Anytime someone comes over and cut it out, put it on cheese and crackers. I love always having it around. So a lot of our elk go into summer sausage. We really like making it ourselves, but that's a lot of work and takes a lot of days and time that we don't always have. So we also get some of it processed, but we do a lot of summer sausage, and the kids love jerky. My kids eat jerky for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Sometimes the school has to send me a message that the kids aren't getting good meals.
they're on a heavy protein diet.
They just want to eat that jerky all day, so I have to shove some other things in with them.
Yeah, I'm curious, Jill, on the aspect of you moving to Wyoming as a new way of life and living out here and supporting your husband's dream to ranch and to take over the family operation. What do your girlfriends back home think of you when you have these incredible kill pictures and these tremendous harvests? Are they like, is this the same gal that I'm sure it's caught a few of them by surprise?
Yeah, I think a lot of them are surprised. A lot of them, I think my family and even some of my friends don't, like, even when they come out, they don't appreciate the outdoors or the Yellowstone or some of the things that I just think are amazing. as much. Like I had a good friend come out this year, and some of them just see all my pictures and all that and think, I want to come out there. I want to see this. And they really do embrace it. Where my family, I come home and they're still like, when are you moving back? I'm like, I'm not coming home. Like,
this is home.
So I think, some people still don't think I'm going to make it after almost 18 years now. They're like, well, it's not going to happen, but I love it. I know my friends, I used to give a hard time, and she sent me a Christmas card and it had their feet on it at the beach. And I'm like, you sent a Christmas card with your feet on it? And she's like, you sent a Christmas card with a dead animal. And I was like, ooh, touche. Okay, we're
all
different.
right, we're even.
Yeah.
All right, dream hunt? Do you have a dream hunt? I
don't have a dream hunt. It used to be an Alaskan moose, but the more I live here and spend time here and have kids in school and things, I say I'm a Wyoming snob. I like hunting here because it's close and it's in my backyard and I don't have to get a plane ticket or pay a bunch of fees to go. So I think my big dream hunt is a mountain goat, probably just because that's all I have left. Like I said, that's one of the hardest tags to draw, and I haven't drawn it.
You've got the bighorn sheep. You've got the elk.
Mule deer, bison, got mule deer.
Yeah.
So
bear, you're an avid bear hunter.
Yes, I do love bear hunting. I just started doing that on my own a few years ago, and I did get one with my bow, but I never found it. I shot one and about 22 yards and tracked it for a couple miles and had a bad shot. So I'm still looking to completely fulfill that one.
But you had seen a lot of bears that year?
Yeah, seen a lot of bears, passed some younger bears. If I'm going to do it, I want to get a big one.
You want a good one, huh? Yeah. All right. So tell me what you now know that you didn't know when you started. That has certainly been the one thing that you can point to, like, glad I got that figured out because it's made things a lot easier or a lot more successful because I got that figured out.
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I think for me, it's just learning to be self-sufficient. Like I used to, all my hunts were with Dustin. He did everything, helped me with everything. And now that we have kids or they're in school or have an event and we can't always get out together, that I think probably the things I appreciate the most are just the things that I've gone out by myself and had to learn or adapt to on my own. I went out one of my first trips, Dustin switched the ball of my truck and I didn't realize it. And I lost my trailer halfway up the mountain and had to get it back on by myself. And just to be able to use your tools and think outside the box. Those are the things in computers and things you have to troubleshoot and think, but you don't have to depend on your physical ability or surviving in the cold and things like that and taking everything you need to be prepared for a storm or anything at any moment. I think the biggest thing I've learned is just always be over prepared. Have anything you think you need, take it with you. Because it's not fun being in a bind. Yeah.
Well said. And Wyoming has a tremendous way of showing you when you're unprepared with the weather elements that we have. On that note, Jill, favorite piece of gear? Is there a piece of gear that's a staple for you in your hunts?
I don't know that I have a favorite. I try to have everything. I love my binoculars carrier that got those a few years ago, and I like having those right on me. But I guess it just depends on what you're doing. You always need a rangefinder or a knife or same thing. Just have it all. I can't think of anything. Probably my favorite thing is just archery in general, shooting the bow and being able to go and practice that. But
and that's always in a time of year when the weather is somewhat cooperative. It's never predictable, but it's generally you have a little bit better mild weather, and it makes for a little bit more enjoyable field experience if you enjoy warmer weather for sure. But it's amazing because I think so often when you think about gear and the preparations of taking to the field, you tend to want to have just this preparedness of effort of whatever unknown might present itself. And I tend to do that sometimes. I tend to overpack or over-prepare and make sure that I have the right mitigating equipment for whatever the situation might be. But bino harness, that is a game changer. You're absolutely right. I do like that. I think that's, I don't know. The other thing that has always impressed me is how, and maybe as a female, you could attest to this, it seems like the hunting industry, and when I say the hunting industry, in regards to gear or i.e. clothing, has advanced a lot in recent years to accommodate the different physique statures of male and female bodies. Have you found that to be the case as a female? Because that's really where it's probably been lacking more than it has on the male side, but I think it's made strides. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I know I still pulled out my first open country Cabela's camo the other day. It's really thick and heavy and you can't really walk in it, but it's warm if you're going to be sitting in a blind or something. And I still have it, but I remember when I first went out for my moose hunt, I don't remember any women's camo or women's anything available. And they do have it now. For whatever reason, some of it doesn't fit me that well. Like the pants are too short, so I still wear a lot of men's. But
it's weird how that works, huh?
Yeah, but I probably also, I'm not a big shopper, so I don't go and try it on. I order it and then I return it and then I get fed up and just end up wearing my men's stuff. But I do think there's a ton more brands. I know so even my gunslings and things are some of the girl brands now, and I really like that. I like when they came out with the fluorescent pink capability here, and you didn't have to wear orange too for whatever reason.
Yeah, we actually were very supportive when they passed that bill, not because we thought of it as a gender option, but really looking at the science of it and how the ocular identification of the actual eye recognizes the different shades of orange and pink, particularly in the fall. To me, it just made sense. It was like, if this is what the science is showcasing and telling, then we should have that option on the table. If you still want to think of wearing pink as a guy or girl thing, so be it. I'm going to wear pink because it's good.
Yep. And I don't know that's why I like it, because it's a girl thing, but it's more just having another color, another choice, having more options when you go out. It's just nice to see things change, see it evolve.
Yeah. Your kids, they hunt? Are they of age?
Yep. So my daughter just turned 12 this year, and Drew turned 13. So they are both of hunting age now. And yeah, that's where it's been at for me now anyways, is taking them really out. But Drew loves it. He loves hunting. He's killed an elk, a deer, and an antelope his first year. So he's way into it. Addie is still coming around. She's like that, well, I want to save the animals mentality. But then when I told her I was bear bait, she's like, oh, I shoot a bear. Like, they're
I want to go, Mom.
Yeah. Yeah. So she likes it, but she hasn't actually completed a big game animal yet. So we'll see. We're not trying to push her into it. Let her do it when she's ready. And
that's where I wanted to go to wrap this up is I wanted to ask what kind of priority that you and Dustin feel as parents raising two children to maintain the hunting heritage. How important is that to you?
Yeah, I guess I want our kids to make those decisions on their own if that's what they want. But I do think there's absolutely a lot to learn or to teach your kids or evolve in that area, that you can learn a lot just about life and grind and tough work. And I think it's real important for just even spending that quality time with them and letting them learn those lessons and some of those things on their own. Even if it's not hunting, ranching for us, just being outdoors, being around the animals, being able to teach them boundaries and things like that. I think those are really important lessons that will go with them a long way.
Yeah, well said, Jill. Certainly your children know where their food comes from. And I think that's important. If you really think about it, and you have friends from back in South Carolina and family members have no idea where their food comes from. It comes from the grocery store, not at the eating home.
Yep, that is very true.
Yeah. Wonderful. Hey, thanks for your time, taking a little bit out of your very busy schedule to just talk about hunting, something that clearly you're very passionate about and enjoying it very much. And it's just been great to talk to you about hunting and celebrate something that is truly a way of life when you live here.
Yep, you bet, Joshua. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. All right, Jill Eaton, part of Campfire Chat, sub-show to Wild Things and Wild Places, talking about hunting and celebrating that ever-important hunting heritage that we hold so dear. Till next time, see you next Tuesday. Happy trails.
And that wraps up another episode of Wild Things and Wild Places. But remember, the journey doesn't end here. Make sure you never miss out by subscribing. Whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, streaming us on our website, or following us on social media, subscribing is the best way to stay connected. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more wild episodes.
Everybody knows I'm a muley fanatic.